kaibigan, welcome back to In My Toolbox. This is where we break down the strategies, systems, and secrets that help real entrepreneurs build real businesses. Now mga kaibigan, let's get into a topic that could completely or might completely change your business trajectory. How do I structure my business so investors want to fund me, fund you? So our title is How to Structure Your Business for Investor Funding. Because, mga kaibigan, let's just be real, okay? Having a great idea is not enough, okay? Having revenue isn't always enough. And even having a killer pitch deck won't actually matter if your business structure is actually broken. See, mga kaibigan, investors don't fund chaos. They would want to fund clarity, systems, legal security, and of course, logical ownership. They look at how your company is being built. It's like an engineer which inspects the foundation of a skyscraper, before they put people inside. So in this episode, mga kaibigan, I'll try to walk you through all the structural decisions that you need to make before you ask for money, or even worse, blow your one shot of a deal. So we'll be talking about which legal structure you should choose, what a clean cap table looks like, how you'll be able to split equity strategically, or what kind of financial investors expect, or how to protect your intellectual property and legal interests, or what kind of governance signals professionalism. And we can also talk about maybe red flags that will kill your deal before you even finish your sentence. So you'll walk away knowing not just how to run a business, mga kaibigan, but how to engineer it to be able to attract capital. So we all know it's really hard to attract capital. So I think, it's time for us to dive in a little bit, okay? So a topic like choosing the right legal structure is something that you would want to look into very deeply. So, because, it's going to start what the foundation of your legal entity would be. So if you're bootstrapping a small service businesses, an LLC may work just fine for you. It's simple, has a pass-through taxation, and easy to set up. But for outside investors, that's not usually a no-go for you. Why? Because LLCs, they don't issue traditional shares. They complicate things like equity, compensation, stock options, and multiple investment rounds. Most professional investors, mga kaibigan, especially, VCs, the venture capitalists, and angel investors, they prefer that your company, at least it could be a C corporation. And this is sometimes, ideally, if you would want to put up a C corporations, ideally, people register it in Delaware. So why Delaware? Because it has a predictable case law, where it is business-friendly courts, and it's the gold standard for institutional investment. Also, mga kaibigan, C Corps allows you to issue stock options. They create preferred versus common stock. They offer convertible notes. You'll be able to plan for the future IPO if you want to go that route, or even acquisition. So what I'm trying to say here, guys, is starting small with no investors, you can always start with an LLC. But if you plan to raise capital, form a Delaware C Corp now, or be ready to convert later. Okay? So maybe you would want to look into a clean cap table, as I've mentioned this, a little while ago. And then, because it's clean future too. So a clean cap table is a clean future. So a clean cap table, your company's ownership structure, okay? This is actually outlines who owns how much of your company. And then under what terms would be the ownership would be. So, it may sound so simple, right? But here's the truth. A messy cap table or capitalization table, that's what you call it, is one of the most common deal, common deal killers in the early stage of the funding part. I've seen startup with 6 co-founders splitting 50-50 equity with no vesting. Okay? It could also be some random investors, from 2 years ago with some weird terms. It also could be equity given to people who are no longer involved. They're no longer investors. And what will that happen? Well, if this is how you structure it, guys, this is unmanageable. And I will not be able to trust leadership right there and there. And a clean cap table should look like, hey, 2 to 3 founders with reasonable splits. That's a good one. They have vesting schedules in place, usually 4 years with a 1 year cliff. Okay. Another one that you would want to see a clean cap table is clear separation between active contributors and passive ones. Another thing too could be legal documents backing every equity grant. Cap tables, this actually tells a story for you. Is this business run by visionaries or is this business ran by amateurs? So keep your cap table clean. And I would want to make sure that you review it every time you take on partners or every time that you put in money, right? So let's talk about smart equity splits. Equity is one of the most valuable currency that you could have, because it's, again, guys, this is easily to be misused. Early on, you'll be tempted to hand it out. Oh, you give it away. Because that friend who helped you, do something for you, or to your cousin who designed the logo, to that mentor who guided you, who gave you advice over a cup of coffee. But guys, look at this. Equity is equal to ownership. So ownership comes with rights. Ownership, comes with rights to profit, to voting, and to future upside as well. So, how you do it, it has to be smart. Start with your own core team. And you have to ask, who's going to build this for the next 5 to 10 years? See, I think that's a fair question to those partners that's going to come in. Who's all in? Typically, early equity breakdown, you have to figure it out already in the very onset of the business, right? Founders usually have 60 to 80% combined. And then investors, they go 10 to 25%, post funding. Advisors, well, you can give them 0.25% to 2% because they're advisors. You can also offer employee stock option pool, 10 to 20%. And then use vesting schedules for everyone because it protects the company from people who would be bailing out early. And I want to make sure that you also would want to document everything legally. The root word here is legally. Handshake deals lead to lawsuits. I'm telling you right now. So that's why I don't like handshake deals. I want to make sure that it's black and white. It's legally written, right? And then remember, guys, equity isn't about fairness. It's about performance. Let me repeat that. Equity is not about fairness. Okay? You don't want to use, to be fair. It's about performance. It's about contribution. And also, most importantly, commitment. Okay? So, how about financial structure and investor metrics? Well, this is all about numbers. But the numbers are not just spreadsheets for you. Because investors want to see financial maturity, not just revenue. So it means that it should be growing. You are actually going somewhere. What they're looking for? Well, you would want to look into this one. This is what they call burn rate. Burn rate is how much cash you spend monthly. Okay? So there's another term that you would want to look into, runway. This means that how many months you have, that you have before your cash runs out. So I was just talking to a hospice company the other day, and we were talking about a runway. They were measuring already how many months that they have before they ran out of cash. Okay. Another thing that you would want to look into is the CAC, as a customer acquisition cost. How much you spend to be able to get a customer if that's the direction of the company, right? So there's another thing that you would want to look into and learn. This is what you call the LTV, lifetime value. It means that how much that customer is worth over time. Okay, that's LTV. So you would want to look into gross margin too. So I think you guys know this one already. This is your profit after your direct cost. This is your gross margin. And you would like to look into your MRR, which is monthly recurring revenue. For, service as sales as a service or subscription models, they want to see that you understand your numbers, not just hope that they will grow. Again, this is very important, guys. They're looking into you understanding the numbers that you have, not just, just a number that you throw out, or just a hope that that you tell them, I hope this business will grow. You want to make sure that when you're looking into funding, you would want to prepare a 12-month operating budget. I mean, you include, not prepare, you include, right? Or a 3 to 5 year financial projection. Usually, of course, when I do this kind of papers, that 12-month operating budget is definitely going to be part of it. But the financial projection, I always use 5 years. I never used 3 years. And then you create scenarios, conservative, expected, aggressive. Create scenarios onto your projection. And then, of course, you would want to hire a bookkeeper. For me, that's a requirement for me when I put up a business. I want to make sure that I have a bookkeeper, because sloppy books, is equal to losing trust. Okay, so believe me, guys, if you don't know your numbers, I tell you, don't step into any pitch meetings if you do not know your numbers. You want to make sure that you are there ready and understand every numbers that's written. Even sometimes, guys, you may even have the numbers, but you don't even understand what those numbers are. That's the reason why, guys, whenever I create all of these financial projections, create all of these numbers, I want to make sure that I sit down with a person that I'm working with. Or if that's my personal business, I want to make sure that I do it myself. And then if I have somebody do it for me, I want to make sure that I work with them very, very deeply. Okay, so I will not be lost into those numbers. So again, guys, if you don't know your numbers cold, don't step into that pitch meeting. Okay, so how about your investor's deck? Have you guys seen any investor's deck lately? This means is it what they actually, your investor's deck is actually what they will be caring about. Okay, so, investors or pitch deck, investor pitch deck, this is your first impression. This is your business resume. This is your story. And maybe you put it in 10, 15, 20 slides. The key word here, guys, when you create your investor's pitch deck is clarity. Okay, so when I create my pitch deck, I always put it a problem. Okay, so make sure when you put your problem statement there, it should sound compelling and it should sound that, it's urgent and it should be painful. That's the reason why it's a problem. You want to make sure that there's urgency there and, it's actually painful when they read the problem. Now, the second part of the flow is the solution. Your unique answer for that specific problem statement. Okay, so now you would want to make sure that you put your market there. This is the opportunity. How big is that opportunity? You have to make sure that you put a clear picture of the market of that business. Now you inject your product. This is where you inject your product. And, you talk about your product, how it actually works. Number 5, you want to talk about, put it there, what traction is. This is your sales, your users, your growth. That's the traction that you would want to show them. Of course, the business model. The business model talks about how you make money. This is your revenue model or your business model. How you're going to be making money out of your proposal. So the next one that you would want to look into is the go-to-market plan. How you are going to acquire your customers. You may have a good idea of the business. You may have said and pitched everything that you would want to say about your product or services, but there's no market. Okay? You want to make sure that you include your go-to-market plan because investors would want to see how you'd be acquiring those customers. Of course, competition. You have to put your competition, and it just talks about why you would be able to win over competition. Now, this is where the confidence is going to come in, because you now know how to get into the market or in that industry, not just starting, not knowing what the competition is. You would want, or they would want to feel that there's such thing as a competitive advantage for your business when you get into that industry. Okay? Of course, who's going to be running it? Who's building the business? And you would want to put who the team surrounding that business and why they're very credible. You would want to make sure to put their resume, their skill sets, their history, why this business is going to be successful. Of course, we will not be forgetting financials. This talks about your revenue, your projection, your unit economics. You would want to make sure that you understand how this financials is all going to be working for your funders. Now, lastly, you would want to make sure, of course, the reason why you're there is your ask. How much you're raising and for what? You want to make sure you make it visual, make it sharp, and above all, guys, you want to make sure that it tells a story with numbers, with data. You're not just selling a product there, guys, when you're looking for funders. You're actually selling belief in a future that whatever your vision was, it's going to be materializing. Okay? So let's talk about legal infrastructure for investors, Legal stuff might sound boring, but until a deal blows up, cover it. Well, guys, I'm telling you, you need to know what the investors wants to see. Proper incorporation documentation, as we talked about, Delaware C Corp, right? Signed founder agreements or IP assignments. Your company owns, its codes, your logos, your trademarks. They want to see that. And they would want to see NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and the contracts with contractors or developers. One of those parts of this documentation that you will be providing for funders is your affiliation with contractors, with developers, okay? They would want to see, maybe if you're on that position already, employment agreements, or they would want to see stock options plan set up, or you can include updated and signed capitalization table or your cap table. If you're raising money and you don't have all of this list that I just mentioned in place, I bet, guys, you have to hit pause first and clean your house first, because you don't want to be going in front of a funder half cooked. And of course, the last thing that you would want is for, a due diligence lawyer to uncover that your CTO still owns the IP personally, not the company. So, guys, they would want to make sure that your paperwork is properly made or done. Okay. Now, let's talk about governance, advisors, and control. Investors wants to know your business is actually accountable. Not just a vision. I love people who are visionaries. They tell me their vision. But then again, when they talk to me about the vision, they put dollar amount on top of that vision immediately. But investors doesn't want to know investors want to know that the business is actually accountable. That means that some governance is expected into that business. They want to see that in the proposal. It doesn't have to be a full board, but what you need to have is at least, a few formal or informal advisors, a system for regular financial reporting, an update rhythm, which is what you call the monthly or quarterly investors report, or maybe they would want to see a dashboard of KPIs that you track, and you need to be transparent about control. Who has the final say? That's the question. Do investors getting voting rights? Whenever I make all of this documentation, guys, or when I talk to my clients about capitalization table, I talk to them about investors' rights. Will they sit on the board? You have to make sure in the very interim of the business you set expectations early, because surprises later is actually equal to conflict, and conflict could actually be equal to lawsuits, and we don't want that, right? We want to make sure that we are in the direction that you would want your vision to happen. So let's talk about red flags that kill the deals, okay? Let's talk about what scares investors away, right? Of course, the opposite of exactly what I told you. No legal structure or some kind of weird LLC setups, and then they would see 7 co-founders and then no vesting. They don't like that, right? No product. What do you call this? Definitely no product. You wanna be selling anything, right? Or revenue projections that triple every year, but no plan. How is it gonna happen? They would want to see logical numbers there. No product market fit. You just have to tell them, no, we have a cool idea, yeah, but there's no market fit. Okay. Or maybe a red flag is founder hasn't invested time or money personally. You have to look into that. Is the founder putting time into this business, or money personally? It can be both, right? No plan for the use of funds. Disorganized books or no tracking systems. Investors have options. Your job is to de-risk the deal, in every little way or possible way. You might want to make sure that when you have a completed documentation, you would want somebody to read it for you. They be able to look into the red flags, and you will be able to remove those red flags before you even raise the money. Wow. There's going to be a lot, right, guys? So, if you want investors funding, you don't just need a pitch. That's the truth. You want to make sure, this is what I tell every client that I have, you need to have a foundation. You need to have a structure. And most importantly, you need clarity. For any shady deals, definitely you're not going to get funders. You're not going to be attracting funders. You need to be ready for a very real scrutiny. So when they ask you, you know what to answer, and you are ready to answer. So remember, guys, C Corp over LLC, you already know that. You would want to have a clean cap table, the capitalization that we mentioned a while ago. Smart equity splits with vesting. You want to make sure that you have vestings there, right? Financials that show maturity of the business. The legal documents that protect the company. And then a story investors can believe in, because they're going to be looking, when you ask for funding, they need to believe the story behind that business. Of course, governance that shows leadership, definitely. You would want to be putting up a team, like a dream team for these investors. No red flags. Period. That's just what it is. Because capital follows structure, not just a hype, not just a vision or a dream. So if you build it right, money will actually follow with that business or the vision that you actually have. All right, guys, again, this is In My Toolbox, and I'm Enrico Pobre. If you got value from today's episode, share this with someone raising capital. Drop your questions in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more No Bluff Business deep dives. Until next time, build smart, be investable, and always lead with clarity. My name again is Enrico Pobre. Until the next episode.